important that you do get to the point where you are comfortable having people with you, and then get to the point where you are working with them because you love working with them as well. So it's that realization that just because you started this business alone doesn't mean that you have to grow it alone.
Hi there, I'm Charlie, your online business manager and WordPress expert. My goal is to assist small to medium business owners build their businesses with a focus on using the internet and online technologies in an appropriate and cost-effective manner. People hire me to take the stress out of managing their businesses and allow themselves to focus on what they do best. Today, I'm joined by Le-an Lacaba. Sorry, I knew I was going to do that. Lacaba, the co-founder of 2xu or 2xu.com. Le-an and I are going to have a talk today about growing and maintaining remote teams and about her specific experience. So g'day, Le-an. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Charlie.
No worries at all. Now, guys, Le-an was telling me just as we came on this call that she's got a bit of a cold, so if she sounds a bit croaky and she needs to mute herself to have a bit of a cough, please, a little bit of grace. That would be fantastic. So, Le-an, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, tell people about yourself, just high level, bring in so they know who they're talking to and where you're hailing from in the world.
So I'm coming from Cebu, Philippines, so a little bit of a time difference on our ends. And a little bit about myself. So I am like you said, co-founder of 2xu. I started about 4 years ago when I was 23 years old. Now 28, turning 29 soon. And I'm also an AI consultant. I just got my certification last month. Big bookworm and someone who's very, very passionate about remote work and helping people get there.
Fantastic. Okay, so you're in the Philippines. So yes, there's a little bit of a time distance, distance as well. But there you go.
Yeah.
I think we're about 2 hours. I think you're 2 hours earlier than me, aren't you?
Over, so yeah.
Yeah. So well, thank you so much for taking the time out to be so early for me. What's it like living in the Philippines at the moment? I know a number of people who live over there, but I never really get to ask what it's like.
Well, the last couple of days has been very hot. So in the Philippines, our summer is very unforgiving. But today, for some reason, I'm actually just looking out. It's a little bit cloudy, which means that it might be a better day. But usually it's been very warm. We've sadly had we had 2 fires and one of them I saw out my window in the last week. But other than that, it's fairly same, fairly good.
Fantastic. Well, look, that's great. So you mentioned that you are the co-founder of 2xu, and that's what we're going to be here to talk about today. But why don't you tell me what led you to becoming the co-founder of 2xu and what 2xu actually is?
So what led me for 2xu? So I actually started working online when I was 15 years old. That was the first remote work I ever got. I was a ghostwriter basically for someone. So no one was asking me for my resume or my age as long as I could write for them. That was all that they cared about. Did graphic work, did video editing. So basically throughout the years until I got to 18 years old, I took any job that I could as a teenager would. And then when I was 18, I started working for this publishing company that they were just startup. They just started like a year ago before I joined. And I'm a big bookworm. So like for me, it was a dream for me to edit books and be paid to read books basically. And then eventually when they wanted to start other companies, they asked like, hey, who wants to start running the publishing company? At that point, I was like managerial level already, raised my hand. I'm like, I want to be trained up a CEO. I want to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I want to learn how a business works. So got training, became CEO of the company, ran it for 3 years, got it to a point where I could step away for 2 to 3 months probably, and everything would still be running and growing fine without me. So I got to the point, as any 22, 23-year-old would when they're bored, of like, I want to start another business. And when I told my boss at that time, who he said, instead of leaving the company, why not I'll become the co-founder of it. We'll start it in the same company. That way you're using the American company, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sure, that makes total sense. Let's do it. So that's basically how a lot of the different things that I've done in 2xu has come to fruition, because for me, my passion became that I want to help a lot of people be able to work from home. for me, I grew up with my dad working overseas. I would only see him once or twice a year just because it was the main way to make money in the Philippines. I would see my mom, sometimes she would travel for work and I wouldn't see her for a while. So for me, I wanted to create a choice for people in the future to not have to leave their family. So in my head, I was like, okay, I want to help million Filipinos work from home. How do I do that? I need to get 10,000 entrepreneurs be able to do remote work. So then 2XU came along with that passion and that dream of we will help hire, manage, and train executive assistants who work from home from clients who want to work remotely. So that's kind of the original pitch that we had, but of course now it's evolved so much with AI and everything else. But that's basically how 2XU started and what we do.
Fantastic. So it sounds like it's actually quite a thing there in the Philippines that you start work young. We start working online young. I mean, most people my age at 15, we would have been out washing cars, pumping gas.
Same thing, but then online. Yeah.
That's online, yeah.
Yeah.
And I do love your comment about no one wants your resume, no one cares about how old you are. They just want to know if you can do the work, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. It doesn't matter. As long as you can do the work, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about working remotely and such, and why it's such an important thing, not only for the people, like we've already touched on some of that, but how it works for your entrepreneurs that are working with these people that you're training up.
So the biggest part of it is that, and this is part of like how I explain it to our clients when they're like, oh, I want someone on my own time zone. I want someone who's like physically here. Is it creates a little bit of a lock. Like you lose a little bit of freedom, because like when you have someone who's in person, you have to think about their office. You have to think about thinking about providing them X, Y, and Z so that they can do the work that they can do. Plus, on the flip side of it is because everyone is now remote, because everyone is now working online, you could be working with clients. Like for us, we have clients all over in UK, US, Dubai. So for me, if I was on our and explain it to our client, like for you in the US, if you had someone in the Philippines who was a 12-hour difference and they were working, some overlap with you, some overlap, some not, basically they're working on their own, kind of looks like your business is kind of working 24/7. You get back to your clients faster, things get moving even while you're still asleep, or for them, even if they took off like a week. Like we have clients this week who took like 2 weeks off and their business is still running because their assistant is there to support them. So that's kind of the dream that I have in mind, is that creating freedom for not just the entrepreneur, like being able to go off, but also on the flip side for their assistants, they're able, like we've this year we've had the most EAs go on international trips just because they can. And like even last week when we had our team meeting, they were like, I'm really grateful for 2XU because now this is the first time ever that I'm working in a different city or working in a different country. So that's kind of the importance for me of the freedom basically of remote work.
Fantastic. All right, so let's talk about how you grow those teams then, because there's a lot of things to think about when you're bringing on someone remotely. As you said, there's things you need to think about when they're working in person, and that you've got to have an office, got to have a desk, a phone, all of the bits and pieces that go along with that, all of the security that goes along with that. But there's a number of things you need to think about when you work remotely, and you already hit one of the concerns that a lot of people have, is that they're not there. Their helper isn't there. They can't see them. They don't know if they're working or if they're really doing what they should be doing. So do you want to have a chat about some of the challenges that you've found and how you've how you've overcome them? There we go. Language is not a good thing today.
No worries. So for how we got around it, so main challenges honestly is communication. Like I've seen someone who has had like 5 years of being an executive assistant, like they know their stuff basically, and a client who also knows their stuff, but because they weren't good at communicating, things fell apart. That's the first thing. So like when we have our EAs onboarded with our clients, the first thing we establish is making sure they have a outside of email way to communicate, like WhatsApp or Slack kind of works, but it's a way basically for the EAs to be able to reach them without feeling that like, oh, I might be bothering my client, I might be bothering this. So the communication systems is a big one of having that quick way of communicating, doing for us, for at least for the first 90 days, doing the daily sync, like 30 minutes a day. You just go through what was done, what wasn't done, anything that you need from me. That way in the EA's head, they're clearing out anything that they need. And also for the client, they know like I still do that daily sync with my EA. Anything that's stuck in my head that was like, oh, I've been sitting on this, I've been wanting to give this to you. At least I don't have to wait the whole like week. If I was just doing weekly meetings, I can easily give it to them. Your camera went out.
It'll come back. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought I lost you. Okay.
It might be my. So I'm on Starlink at the moment, so it might just be my Starlink is resetting itself.
Got it. Should I continue?
Yeah, keep going. It's okay.
Yeah,
I can hear you at least.
Perfect. The second usual challenge when it comes to growing a remote team is not knowing who you want to hire. Like I did this myself. I made this mistake myself of like 2XU grew too fast at the very beginning. I started delegating operational tasks or managerial tasks to my own EA, burnt her out sadly. So then I had to be intentional of who I hire, of like the roles that I want to hire. So I did the there's a book Traction basically by Gina Wickman, if I remember right. There's a book E-Myth that talks about like, hey, write out the roles and responsibilities of the team, create your org chart, even if you're just a solopreneur, like create it. So then you're intentional of how you want to grow, who you want to hire without burning out yourself or the person that you're working with. So that's kind of the second one is like, I had to, it was only literally just 2 years ago that I started hiring my first manager for 2XU. Before that, I was managing 10 to 12 EAs myself on top of managing the company. So I shifted that as well. And now we have like 3 amazing managers inside 2XU. They're doing amazingly of working with their EAs. But that was kind of the shift over is like we grew too fast, delegated the wrong thing to the wrong person and burnt them out. And then now having the growth basically of the org chart kind of coming to life. We have our client success managers now, people handling the clients. It's not anymore just me. So it's being intentional about how you grow. And a good third challenge would be forgetting a little bit about the growth. Like people, my favorite business consultant basically told me the people are always looking for connection and growth. Like even as you're always talking all the time, you're always connecting with your people, there's always still that's missing of like, even the growth isn't salary based, the growth of somewhere of their skill, of the way they're thinking, they're always craving for that. So that's a main thing to keep in mind when you're remote, when you're not in person. You can't high five that person, you can't just hug them, they're like, oh, we did amazing here. It's keeping in mind that connection of like every time there's a win to celebrate, you put it out for everyone to celebrate. Every time that something sucks, just only talk to that one person who didn't do well. So it's maintaining that thought that people want connection and growth. So what are the different ways from day to day that you can do that?
Okay, look, that's fantastic stuff. And so there's a few things that you hit on there, and I wanted to just touch on them again. One of them was you burnt your own EA out because I'm assuming you just dumped everything on her. Words are not probably the best way of saying it, but you probably just went, blah.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about that burnout and the sorts of things people do when to cause that to occur? Because I know that that's something that I've experienced in my own life when I've been working in my own business, when I've been working with new clients. It's like too much, I can't cope. And B, I've done it myself with my own team, and I know that others have done the same thing, and then that's left a very bad taste in both people's mouths in terms of how it's going to go from there. So do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with burnout because I am someone who likes to take on more than I can chew a lot of the time, just because like I'm passionately curious in a lot of ways. But for something that happened with that EA, basically it was that I was like, oh, I'm a little bit overwhelmed here, and naturally, like, and this is what I love about working with Filipino EAs, and it's definitely a double-edged sword. It's like, oh, let me help you with that. Let me help you with that. Let me do that for you. Let me take care of that. No worries. I got that. When you're not careful with that, when you're not careful of careful of looking at the capacity of someone, then you can easily burn themselves out. So for example, for me, I was delegating meetings. I was delegating like, hey, can you create this report? Even though naturally it should be someone who's not working with me as an EA, working as a manager. So there was a lot of that, of not being aware of the capacity, not seeing beyond what was basically the, yes, I got this. Yes, I'll do this for you. Because of course, for them, for the person that you're working with the team, they also might not be clear basically on the responsibilities of what's happening. So burnout really, and I've said this before, like it starts with clarity. Like if you're not clear what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to be burnt out. If you're not clear of what the next steps are, or of what this could look like in a long term, you're going to get burnt out. So it's first really getting the clarity of what it is that you want, focusing on that, finishing that. My co-founder calls it the AAA system, of like finish the first project first, and then you go to the next, and then you go to the next. Because if you try to do all of that at one point, yes, at the very end you have a finished project, but then you're still working on the second one, you're still working on the third one. Versus if you worked on A first, that you already have the benefits as you're working on the B project. You already have the benefits of A and B when you work on the C project. So it's kind of making sure that, and I am very guilty of this as someone who's multi-passionate, but like making sure that you wrap things up first before you work on the next thing, so then you can kind of have that clarity of like what to do next.
So there was something there that you said that struck me as well. And that was that your assistant is often, yes, I can do that. I've got it. I've got you covered. And people think, well, they're saying that, and that's, so I'm just trying to think of the right words to use here. They're saying that, and they don't have the skill set, therefore they're incompetent. And what a lot of people don't realize is that they're saying that because they don't want to say no, because they feel that saying no will limit their opportunity within a job and within an organization. And it's really, really important to remember, I think, that a lot of people don't like saying no because they don't want to feel, well, first of all, they don't want to feel like they're a failure, because saying no means I'm a bit of a failure. But it also means that they feel that, there's this, well, if you're going to say no to that, you're going to say no to something else, and no to something else. So I'll just find someone else to do that work. Whereas I always say thank you. When someone comes back to me and says, I really don't know what I'm doing in this isn't the sort of thing that I would do, I say thank you so much for being honest with me. I wanted to give you the opportunity to say yes or no. You wanted to give it a go, or you knew what you were doing, or you didn't know what you were doing but you were prepared to learn, because they're very different approaches. Sometimes you might say to me, I don't know what you're doing, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm prepared to learn. I'll say, actually, look, this job, I don't have the time or the luxury to let someone learn. I need someone to, don't die. I need someone to be able to do it really, really quickly, but I will bear you in mind, and we'll get some training so that you can learn how to do all of that stuff. So I think that's a really important thing about, you talk about burnout because people take on too much. People don't take on too much necessarily because they're incompetent or they don't know what their limits are. They do it because they're afraid.
Yeah, that's true also. It's kind of like how when we're trying to give something to we're trying to give a kid a chore and they just like are not good at it. They're like, oh no, okay, never mind, you don't do that, just do this other thing. I'll give that to your sister, I'll give that to your brother. It's kind of that fear, like, oh, but I really liked it, but I enjoyed it, I want to do better for it. So that makes sense in a lot of ways, and something for people that people forget to keep in mind is like, just because that's not a fit for you doesn't mean that you're incompetent. It just means that wasn't for you. Then we can start focusing you in somewhere else.
Yep. And if you enjoy doing it, that's great. Maybe ask for some training, maybe ask for some more support. And, we as the managers and the leaders and the entrepreneurs in our own business have to learn that ourselves. There's also, again, the last part of that is the realization is that sometimes you might really want to do something and you just suck at it. It's just not your thing. And that's okay. It's quite okay. You've just found something that isn't a fit for you. And if you want to go learn it, that's fine. It's probably not the best time to do it on your boss's time or on business time when you're trying to,
Mm,
get your money
figure it
through
out.
the
Yeah.
door and get your things happening. Okay, so that's one of the pitfalls. Now, when you're bringing on EAs and such, like when you're trying to grow a team, how do you grow that team? Because I know it was something that you're pretty passionate about. I saw that in all of your documentation I was reading. How do you go about, growing that remote team, bringing people on board, managing them? What are some of the key steps there or things that people need to think about?
Well, the main part of that is that org chart that I was talking about, of like knowing, like for me, I have a ongoing chart where I always try to think of like if I 10x my business right now, who would I need? Because that has happened over and over again. We're like, oh, we're only growing this much this year. Like, oh no, we're growing this much this year. So that's always the thought in my head. It's like every end of the year, I look at our numbers, our people, of like if we had 100 more clients today, what would that look like? Who would I need? What would the org chart kind of explode into? So then for me, I have a clear picture of like where we're heading. And I also have written out like each role and responsibilities for that. Now that might change a lot. Like once I actually hire a person, like in the last year of growing my own team, I've changed their job description just because like, oh, this actually doesn't make sense for you to do it. Like, okay, let's shift this over to this person. Let's communicate that with them. So having that, even though it's a moving, an ever evolving description, at least you're able to sit down, look at it. Is it accurate? Do we remove things from it? So then when you're hiring, it's also easy for you to know the kind of skills that you need, and also the flip side, the soft skills that you need. And a lot of people forget about the soft skills part of a person who could be a match. Like in 2XU, I always joke all the time with our clients of like, yes, we're getting you your second brain, but that doesn't mean a second you, because if there was a second you, they would just start their own business. They'll do their own thing. We're looking for an extension of you who complements you on what you need, but at the same time can kind of be strengthened a weakness that you might have. So common weakness for entrepreneurs, for example, is of course the attention to detail. Things fall through the cracks, things get forgotten. So you need someone who then strengthens you on that end. So then you guys are working geared together. So that's kind of the main thing, is like you think of your remote team of like you guys are a clock. Like each person has a gap, each person has a strength, but then you guys work together, so then the clock keeps moving and clock keeps going. So you're not just hiring someone who has 10 years experience because they've doing this forever, but then they actually make everyone else miserable. You want to filter for that. You might find someone who has had just 2 years experience, but they're an amazing manager. They work with your people perfectly. They are empathetic. They are able to get things done with them instead of getting things done for them. So having those distinctions of your culture, of like what are your values are in the company, also your strengths as an entrepreneur. So then as you're hiring, you're finding people who are complementary of themselves. You're not hiring a duplicate of you or a duplicate of the other manager that you just hired, because you have the clarity of the kind of hard skills and soft skills that these people would need. And there's always going to be also the evolution of like your tools and your systems and making sure things are documented, and also as your capacity. Like right now, I think I'm managing within our admin team, I think I'm managing 8 people. So very soon I will need to hire a manager to manage them. So it's keeping in mind that growth will always come in with people of how many your capacity as an entrepreneur as well to manage this number of people. I found that the magic number is 7. Like a moment is beyond 7, I know it's time to hire someone on top of that. But that's kind of the thing to keep in mind as you're growing, is there will be mistakes. There will be like, oh my god, this worked with someone who had $1 million business but doesn't work with my mini business. So it's figuring out and also knowing that it's okay to kind of pave your own path, because people are different, life is different, and it will always have adjustments.
Fantastic. Okay, so for an entrepreneur who doesn't know what it is they need to manage their business, like drawing out that org chart, because often, as is the case with entrepreneurs, as you said, the attention to detail kind of lacks when they like to move quickly, and sometimes they're reactive, sometimes they're responsive. It depends on which way you look at it.
Yeah.
But they often don't know what they're looking for when they're looking for that first person, or even what they're looking for in their org chart. So they'll often just go out and look for that first person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recommendations for them as to how they go looking for that first person, the sorts of things they should be asking, the sorts of things they should be doing?
Well, the first part of it is knowing what you want to delegate. Like, the I like asking clients, basically I call it the surgeon story of, like, for example, like for you, you're a specialist in what it is that you do. You show up with your clients, you deliver a service, and that's the magic basically that what you do. You have That's your surgery room. But there are things that need to get done before that and after that. So when you're trying to hire your first person, you want to first imagine of, like, how can I get support so I don't get burnt out also. So then, for example, for me, like, my main thing is showing up for our clients and, like, doing the at least the beginning part of, like, onboarding, getting them ready, because now I have a client success manager who takes care of the rest. But then before I hop on a call, my assistant already researched them. My assistant already verified if they're a good match. My assistant probably also primarily already gave me a list of, like, hey, these are the things that I think they're probably going to want to delegate to an executive assistant. So she supported me on that, and then afterwards she is making sure that the right files get sent to the client success manager. She's making sure the right files get sent to the recruitment team. So she's managing everything else outside of me so I can just show up. So it's looking at what's basically your 80/20. Like, out of the 10 things you're doing in a day, what is the two that is the one that matters most to you, your vital tasks, and then delegating the functional tasks. Because a lot of the time we're just doing the functional tasks. We're doing things to run the business, not grow the business. So it's looking at, in my day-to-day, like, is it email management? Is it calendar? Is it social media? Is it literally ordering your favorite cup of coffee from Starbucks? So all you need to go is go down to your lobby and pick it up. But then since they're remote, they can order it for you. They can get it for you. So it's looking at it from that point of view, because the beautiful thing is, like, as you focus on different things, you're bringing your EA with you. That's kind of the goal. Like, in the last Tuesday, actually, we just launched our 2XU podcast. And as I'm doing that, my EA has also been, like, looking at what needs to be done before I do the podcast and after I do the podcast, because again, that's that second brain person. And then as you see the capacity of your EA kind of get to the top limit, then keeping in mind that org shot, like, okay, now we need to hire for this role. Now we need to hire for this role. Skipping the mistake that 25-year-old Le-an made of, like, delegating it to the EA. Then you want to intentionally then hire for that next person.
Fantastic. Okay, that makes a heap of sense. One of the things that I find people say to me is, I just don't know what I do. Like, I just do it. I just don't know what I do.
Yeah,
I've got
sure.
all these things that I do, and like I sort my email and I do these things, and then I get in here and I click these buttons and I do these things. I have to teach someone to do all that. Do you recommend that? Just trying to phrase that question a little better. How would you recommend someone, or how would you work with someone who has got all these things that they're doing? They haven't got anything written down specifically. They just know that this is how they do it and they go and do it. How would you recommend they work with you and your team, or a EA coming in or a VA coming in to start to offload that work to them?
Well, part of it is we also train our clients in a way. Part of it is, like, talking about, like, the surgeon story and, like, what is your 80/20 of trying to it sometimes feels like a tooth extraction, to be honest, when I'm doing those calls. I'm trying to figure out what a client wants to delegate. But usually then I think, okay, what are the 3 outcomes that you need your EA to do? Like, oh, I need them to take care of this, take care of this, take care of this. Okay, that's perfect. We'll start from there. And a lot of the time when a client is onboarded, we have a 90-day onboarding program that walks them through, okay, this now, since you said these are the 3 things you want the EA to do, these are now their goals. So, like, being able to either learn this or offload this from you, so then they're taking care of it. Then let's go ahead and create your task delegation system. So then you know what they're doing, and they're supposed to, they already know what the next steps are because you've already written it out. Then let's create your delegation system. Like, how would you capture basically tasks that you think of, like, oh, I shouldn't be the one doing this. My EA should be the one doing this. Like, for me, I have a group chat that's just literally me and my EA, but it's called Brain Dump. Of any time that I feel that I'm spinning in my own head, I will just hit record of, like, okay, I need this and this and this done. And then for her, she'll transcribe that, put it into tasks. It'll either be on my task list or her task list, but at least it's out of my head. And then creating, like, capturing what are the daily, weekly, monthly things that need to get done in the business. So then that's perfectly where an EA comes in as well. So we have different ways that we train our clients to start thinking of it, but it really just starts with getting used to the part where you do have an EA, where you do have a person that you can give things to rather than just doing it yourself. I'm very guilty of that. From time to time, still like, oh, I should have probably given this to my EA. But again, it's a learning curve to have someone, especially like we have clients who've been a solopreneur and been earning a lot for 5 years, but then the shift and there's a significant shift in the business, and then they now need an EA that I have to like help them unlearn. Like, no, you can give that to the EA. Like, no, it's fine. They'll take care of it. Even if they don't know how to do it, they'll figure it out. As long as things are recorded, you can give them like a video that they can follow. Then it's not really you training them; it's them looking at the training you already created, learning it a couple times, and then doing it.
Yep. Okay. Excellent. So do you have systems that you use for that? Like, I know that within my own CRM, I've been setting up a knowledge base where, oh, I need to teach someone to do that. I'll do a screencast and then I'll do the screenshot. So it take me forever, ever and ever and ever to do, but they're done. And then when someone says, how do I do this? I'm like, you didn't look at the process, did you? You didn't go and check the knowledge base, because I know that's in there because I did it. So go and have a look at it and come back and ask me if it's still a problem for you, because I know I'm not perfect, but give it a go at least.
Yeah.
So what about systems and tools and such?
So part of it as well is like we developed our SOP database. So without yet, we're still developing this part actually of going into the client's business and like going step by step, is we have the EA do it. We have the EA go through like, okay, what happens here? Like when you're onboarding a client, can you ask basically how can this come from saying yes all the way to delivered? So then the EA goes through that and actually starts documenting that as well, not just their tasks, but also the tasks of the rest of the team. That's maybe not their concern, but at least it's documented and written down and putting into a database, basically kind of like your knowledge base. We call it just SOP database. It could be created on Notion, Google Sheets, and then it's turned into an actual written out document, because then tools can change, a total UI shift basically, but the steps are still there written down. It can easily be changed. Then it's also prompt to update the knowledge base to the new video based on the new interface basically on the tool. So there's a agreed way of how things are done. So then there's that easy repeatable results because it's already written out how to do. And a lot of people skip that of like, oh, you actually need to write down what it is that you're doing. So then anytime there's a change, it's easy to shift it rather than having to restart the system all over again. There's also the part of 2x2 systems is what we call the BOS, which is the business operating systems, where the EA goes ahead and actually captures the assets in the client's business. So most of the time, solopreneur doing everything ourselves. We have our logo in one Google Drive folder. We have our branding photos in another folder. So the EA goes ahead and actually collects, like we have a whole checklist of like, I think 74 assets now of where's your vision and mission? Where's your org chart? Where's your brand kit? Where's your marketing strategy? Where's your marketing funnel? So like the EA goes ahead and actually captures that and puts it in one place. So then for people, they see the OS, they see the operating system of how the business works, and it's easy for them to grab things as they need to and be able to just get the work done without having to bug the entrepreneur, because the EA already kind of laid it out for them.
Awesome. Fantastic. No, that's really, really good information. I love that. Now, I wanted to touch a little bit on the AI. You said you've just got your AI certification. What does that mean? And then we'll come back to how that benefits other people. So what does getting your AI certification actually mean?
So in the last year, when ChatGPT came out in November 28, if I remember right, within like 2 weeks, I was like using it. I was like nerding out about it. I was freaking out, like, oh my God, this will make this part easier. This make this part easier. And I started teaching it a lot of our EAs, and I started kind of doing it for other people where I would create AI assistants for them to do certain tasks. Like I jokingly called it your task GPT. So I would ask them like, hey, let's automate you creating your content. Let's teach ChatGPT how to learn how to write. And let's go ahead and actually, then anytime that you have an idea that you want to have ChatGPT finish, you can start doing that. Or you can ask ChatGPT to generate content ideas for you. So I started doing that for different people or friends of like, hey, here you go, send it off. And I came across one of my friends, his name's Jeff Hunter, started doing selling basically a course on how to create AI personas. That's what he called them. And then he started setting out like, hey, you can be certified and actually becoming a consultant for AI personas. And I took it took me 6 months to actually do it, just because in my head of like, oh, everything louder and everything else, I want to focus on 2XU first, then I'll actually take the test. Took the test last March. Yeah, right before I took a trip. Took the test, passed it, and got it. So now, within the last week, I've started. I call it Create AI Assistant. That's the company name. At least for now. It might change later on. But it's essentially creating your task GPTs to automate a few things in your business just using ChatGPT. And then I also work with them as a consultant for our clients. What other tools that they can put into to make that easier for them. Once ChatGPT creates it, we're going to look at the automations that they can create, so on and so forth. So it's getting people who have no idea how to use ChatGPT for themselves, seeing what ChatGPT can do, and then going ahead and actually automating a few things off of their brain, so then they can start exploring and playing around with ChatGPT as well.
Okay, awesome. And you're teaching your EAs to do this as well for your clients?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I did an interview with I've done a couple of interviews with guys on AI over the last couple of years. And the one thing that's come through to me really, really clearly is that the EAs, the VAs that can actually pick up and use AI on behalf of their clients are going to be the ones that get the good jobs and get work, because that's where the hole is. The entrepreneurs don't want to learn it, they might want to, they don't have the time, often they don't have the aptitude or the patience to learn it. But being able to say to someone, hey, listen, I need this done, and have an EA go, yep, I've got that, let me go and use ChatGPT, we'll get that all set up, and then I'll bring it back to you and we can discuss it. That seems to be the way it's going to go forward.
Yep. It's just why empowering basically the EA to use AI, so you don't have to.
Excellent. Look, that sounds fantastic. And it sounds good that it's great that you're teaching your people to do this as well. Now, if you don't mind me asking, I want to know a little bit about the people behind your business, your EAs themselves. I'd like to just get a bit of a feel for who they are, not names or anything, but type of people they are, their walks of life they come from, and what is driving them to come and work for 2XU as opposed to trying to do themselves or go to one of those. I understand there's agencies over there that people can just go work for, which may or may not be a great place to work.
So for our, sorry.
No, go on. Yeah, you were answering it. That's fine.
Yeah. So for our EAs, they're amazing people. Like my highlight usually at the end of the week, we have a whole company wide meeting that we do. We check on everyone else. Everyone is kind of chatting around, even just on Zoom. And we also have every other month, we actually have a meetup. This month we have an in-person meeting. Like, everyone is kind of working remotely. We have some people who can't fly in. We have a certain event in the year we fly everyone in to meet in person. But for our EAs, we actually talked about it the other day, where we found that our top EAs, the ones who are both loving what they do and also really good at they do, but that's our two factors, were one, they were people who had a life outside of work. That was kind of the biggest part, is we found people who didn't have and this will sound terrible, but there's no other way to say it. But anytime I've asked the question, like, what do you like to do for fun during like a job interview, and they say, oh, just sleep around. I just maybe Netflix from time to time. They don't work out in the long run because they don't have something to motivate them to work. They don't have something to drive them, that they're grateful for the work that they do because it gives them the freedom to do this. So we found that they're either into, like, they have hiking, they're biking, they do yoga, either they do something physical, or they're doing like, hey, I love to read. I love to explore different things. I love to learn. So that's the first trait that we found that really works for an executive assistant, is that they have a life outside of their work. The second one is they're someone who just problem solves through things. So like whenever they have a blockage, they problem solve. And this is a key thing, the third part is that they know how to ask questions. They know how to ask for help. They don't just kind of sit in their home office kind of crying to themselves. They don't know how to do something. They actually go ahead and, hey, I need this support. I need to ask for this help. And within 2XU, part of our company values is called Tribe of Superheroes. So every single person in 2XU has their own superpower, whether that's in copywriting, whether that's in social media management, whether that's in operations or project management. And even as they're working one-on-one with their client, basically, they have this whole tribe that they can ask questions. Someone else, you're struggling right now, someone else probably already went through that 6 months ago. They can walk you through how to get out of it. So that's kind of the biggest part of, and I always hear this feedback all the time of why people like working or love working with 2XU, is that community, is that tribe of people that they can ask questions, that they can tap people. And at the same time, like, they have that, again, that freedom to be able to work anywhere, almost work at any time, depending on their client schedule. But they have more freedom than just being able to work anywhere.
Okay, fantastic. So you've got people who have got outside interests. The reason they're working is because they want to have a life outside of work. They're not just working to work, which is one of my big things that I talk about all the time. Is that, are you living to work or are you working to live? One of the two, but one's better than the other. And it sounds like you've got people that are, well, troubleshooters. You said it, problem solvers, troubleshooters. They can work it out. If they can't work it out, they ask for help. That sounds amazing. And these are all Filipinos, or are they from around the world, or?
Well, for now, just because it's easier for us, not just like org legal wise to be in the Philippines, but also it's also easier for us, for our managers, to not have to manage other people, other cultures. It's easier for us to just have it here. They're all college graduates, very wicked smart in what they do. Like I said, they have something that drives them forward, which is always one of the questions we love to ask when we're interviewing them, of like, if you won the lottery 5 times, what would you do the rest of the money? When they're able to draw out the life of like, oh, I want to do this, I want to buy this house, I want to start this business, or I want to start this charity, that tells us a lot about where their own drive and motivations are coming from too.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds great, and it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job there, helping your local people, which is great. Now, just while we're talking on community and the importance of having a community, I want to just talk about a little bit about my locals community. Being a business owner can be tough. Being a business owner who works remotely can get lonely and frustrating, which is kind of what we're talking about here today. That's why I started my locals community, a community for business owners that could be a bit like the water cooler of old. Treat my local community as a place where you not only get to interact with me, but with each other. You can gain inspiration, provide inspiration and advice. And of course, you can always ask for that help that is so often needed. And you don't even know what question you're asking, just I need to do this thing. So please come on over and join me at askcharlyleetham.locals.com. And back to us. Thank you so much for letting me do that today. So, Le-an, out of everything we've spoken about today, what's the one thing you really want my listeners to take away with them?
It's a really good question. We've touched on a lot of different things, but I guess on building on basic and the amazing community it sounds like you're building, I think the main thing is that you don't have to do it alone. Like, whether you are going ahead and actually hiring a remote team, or you're doing the first step of hiring an executive assistant for yourself, or that you just have a community that you can go into. Being a solopreneur, starting a business on your own, like, even I had a co-founder, but it still felt very alienating and alone, and like no one else could really understand what I was going through, blah, 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 blah. It's important that you do get to the point where you are comfortable having people with you, and then get to the point where you are working with them because you love working with them as well. So it's that realization that just because you started this business alone doesn't mean that you have to grow it alone. And again, whether that's hiring an executive assistant, growing a team, or just getting a community around you, it does lift your shoulders a little bit from the burden that you've put on yourself because you went into entrepreneurship. But that's kind of the fun of it as well.
Fantastic. All right. So make sure you've got support, make sure you're building your community, and that's why you should get yourself some support early on, pretty much. Okay, now how can people find out more about you?
I'm on everywhere. I'm on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you probably are. I'm also on Threads, just because randomly that was the thing for a little bit. So it's just Le-an and Lacaba, just straight my name without the dash. And yeah, I'm always more than happy to. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So I'm more than happy to chat with people as they need to.
Fantastic. Well, I will have those links down in the show notes. I'll also have a link to 2xu.com where people can find out more about what you're doing. I'm just trying to think. Oh, yes, that's right. Remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, ring the notification bell so that you find out when I drop more content. Come across and join me at Locals. If you can also leave a review, that would be fantastic. 5 stars is great. Any stars is good. And maybe share this video with someone who you might feel will benefit from it and who wouldn't necessarily see it. Apart from that, Le-an, did you have any last things you wanted to add before we finish up for today?
All good. This was very lovely, Charlie. Thank you for your time today.
No, you are most welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, I will see you all next week.